Tonight, our 12 in 2012 series continues with a look at former Alaska Governor Sarah Palin, a woman now familiar to most Americans. This evening, Sarah Palin, in her own words, on whether she'll run for president.
Governor Sarah Palin of the great state of Alaska.
From the moment John McCain made Sarah Palin his surprise choice for vice president, it was clear the Alaska governor was a new Republican star. She drew huge, enthusiastic crowds, but also became the target of the Saturday Night Live ridicule, the rumors about her family.
But it wasn't your child.
Oh, yeah, that's funny. Yeah.
That was another thing. It was really Bristol's child. I mean,
and the sniping about her clothes and who paid for them.
Wasn't that ridiculous? That was ridiculous. You know what, though? That hasn't changed.
Or just the downright loathing.
You get Sarah Palin, you get extremism.
Much of the discomfort with Palin came from a series of network interviews just after her nomination.
Did you ever travel outside the country prior to your trip to Kuwait and Germany last year?
2 years and many interviews later, her star power on one hand and the constant attacks from the left on the other endure. The combination makes her decision whether to run for president in 2012 one of the most important milestones in a race that is just beginning. Where are you on a 2012 run?
Gosh, I still don't know. If there are others out there who are principled and hardworking and willing to make the sacrifices that you need to make as a family, as an individual, as a candidate, and then as an elected official, I'll keep doing what I'm doing and I'll be their biggest supporters and I want to get them elected as president. But if, Brett, there's nobody else that I think wants to do the job and is willing to make the tough decisions and isn't so caught up in the political machine that they believe that they have to compromise, then I'd be willing to make the sacrifices and run for office.
If Palin does run, her critics underestimate her at their peril, says conservative author Angelo Codavilla.
Here is someone born with no advantages. She's a wife and mother. Does well as a member of the school board, becomes mayor of her town, runs for governor, beats the old boys, and then is introduced to national politics, where she's vilified like I don't think any other American politician has been vilified in this century, and continues to inspire millions.
Those millions of Palin supporters include large swaths of the Tea Party movement, who believe the government has been hijacked by the governing elite. Palin hears them.
Americans are saying we can't keep doing business as usual in D.C. The voters expect a smaller, smarter federal government, more states' rights, more individual rights. Those are solutions that'll get the country on the right track.
You talk about cutting the federal budget. What one program would you start with?
We need to have a spending freeze and a hiring freeze. Tell the bureaucracies, no, you're not going to get an automatic increase in your government program just because it's a new fiscal year. Why is the assumption that government has to grow?
But can you cut enough to make a dent?
Yeah, well, look what we just did with $1 trillion in stimulus. All that stimulus package actually stimulated was Tea Party Americans saying no more. Look at the $3 trillion that Obamacare is ultimately going to cost. We repeal that. We don't fund that. We start looking at real market-oriented, patient-centered reform for health care. We're talking trillion here, trillion there. It's going to start adding up, Brett.
If you were to name one foreign policy issue that's most pressing, most crucial right now, what would it be?
We cannot allow Iran to ever have its hands on a nuclear weapon. If we don't do the right things there, you know, we can only imagine what the consequences are.
She's actually in a good position to win the Republican nomination. She is not in a particularly good position to win the presidency in a general election. Sarah Palin is probably the most polarizing, and polarizing candidates rarely are elected president.
So what do you say to analysts who would say it would be tough for you to reach the middle?
Yeah. Well, I won't compromise on my core values, and the core values politically are that a smaller, smarter government makes more sense than what we're seeing today, and that our freedoms and our free market are the answers to the problems that we face today.
It's not so much her values that make many Republicans worried that Palin might win their nomination. They fear that too many Americans don't see Palin as a plausible president. Even fellow Fox News contributor Karl Rove, citing Palin's new miniseries on TLC, questioned whether she has the gravitas to be elected. Karl Rove had a quote recently. "I'm not certain how that fits into American calculus of that helps me to see you in the Oval Office."
Yeah, and I don't know how Ronald Reagan was ever seen in the Oval Office, having come from a career in television. Carl.
Do you see a connection to Reagan?
Well, Reagan was criticized for being an ideologue, for being too superficial, too idealistic, too optimistic, and a bit too independent. I see perhaps a comparison in maybe some of our record, but nobody can be compared to Ronald Reagan.
A better comparison for a Palin White House run might be the campaign of the man she'd be looking to replace. Senator Barack Obama was a relative unknown 4 years before he ran. He also had less than 2 years' experience in high office. Unlike Obama in 2004, Palin does have executive experience from her time as Alaska's governor. She quit before the end of her first term, claiming the media obsession with her and her political opponents' efforts were hurting the state of Alaska. And while Barack Obama was powerfully attractive as the first black presidential candidate, Palin would be as historic, the first woman to be nominated for the Oval Office. The question is whether a chance to make history will offset swing voters who have doubts about Palin. Palin only promises this much. If she does run, expect the unexpected.
I'll tell you what, my run would be unconventional. I've never had polls conducted before I jumped in. I've never had an exploratory committee tell me what I should or shouldn't do. If I believe in my gut that it's the right thing to do, I'm going to jump out there and do it.
Next up in our 12 in 2012 series, Indiana Congressman Mike Pence